morning, everybody. It's April 29th, 2022. I'm Charlie Fink. I'm here with Ted Schilowitz. It's This Week in XR. Thanks, as always, to our sponsor, Virbela. Our guest today, Steve Sinclair of Mojo Vision. Ted, I'm excited about this one. These are the folks who make the AR contact lenses, and I tried it last time they were in town last month, and it works.
Yeah, this
It really works.
This is one you've seen before me because I have yet to see it, and I'm excited to see it. We're obviously tracking this stuff very closely.
Yeah, it's you control it through your gaze direction. It is really weird, but also very strangely exciting.
But you haven't actually had it put in your eye yet, right? You're looking.
No, they have a tool.
Device. They
have a tool that allows you to get as close as possible without touching. So it's like a surgical instrument that you lay against sort of the outside of your eyelid. And then you get it as close as possible. It's a pretty great simulation of what it would be like. I saw full color video. I was able to scroll through, text as if I was, had a personal teleprompter. I mean, they're looking at actual applications with athletes. So let's save that for Steve, but should be a great conversation. So in the news this week, Ted, lots of stories, none overwhelmingly huge unless you're talking about billions of dollars. But the company formerly known as Facebook reported its earnings, which shattered the company last quarter when they missed growth projections and revenue projections because of the changes in Apple's search algorithm or Apple's privacy algorithm.
Right. Your opt-in, opt-out stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it absolutely crushed Instagram and Facebook as well. Right. It's amazing how many. So they announced yesterday and they came a little bit closer. It was not as dire. Their stock went up 20%.
Yeah.
Their revenue. So I wanted to talk about their XR revenue in particular. Sorry, I'm having a little problem with my
what happened
here. So they were up 30% on revenue in the XR area. So they made $695 million in Q1 this year. So that's pretty impressive. Of course, costs are rising quickly for the Facebook Reality Lab. So those were up 62%, offsetting it. And Zuckerberg said something interesting. He thinks they may not really be yielding a substantial profit from XR until the 2030s.
Yeah, which is in line with what you and I talk about, right?
This is the decade of growth, but that's a lot of investment for them to sustain.
Right. Well, if we look at it from a time frame perspective, when you and I started really talking and interfacing a lot on this 2013, 2014 time frame, now we're roughly to that 10-year mark.
Yeah, we did say it was going to take 10 years.
Well, I did. I mean, I know I said this is kind of where the first arc of this will be. Now we're seeing essentially profitability across the board. But as you say, expenses are still extraordinarily high with this. So when we get to the 2030s, we'll be sort of in that next juncture. So it makes total sense in the timeline that I've always been talking to people about. So
they opened a retail store.
Yes.
I think it's adjacent to their campus.
Right near their campus. Yeah.
So I guess you go there to demo the Quest if you don't have a friend who owns one. And then they're doing something with the Smithsonian. I talked to a number of developers this week. I mean, they are pushing hard to, it's like the beginning of the web, right? They are pushing hard to get people to make content, to enable them to make content. You're putting together teams and companies that they're essentially spinning up with their money. So it shows you, their expenses are high, but look at everything they're doing. Every week we have, 3-4 stories having to do with Meta. Look, they partnered with the Smithsonian to create a VR moonwalk, which, of course, makes incredible sense and could be really exciting in a location-based setting. So it's just story after story after story. They are spending the $10 billion to make something.
Right. I mean, they committed to this and they're making good on it. the Moonwalk Smithsonian stuff is really interesting. It's large scale. It's, you know, it adds pieces to the legitimacy of this. It adds more understanding and user base to it. I'm very excited about that piece of the puzzle. I think it's really interesting.
So another company that's talking about the 2030s is Snap. They just introduced a new toy, which I cannot wait to get my hands on, called the Pixie.
A little micro drone, right?
It's a micro drone, and it has very short battery life. It only takes 60-second videos, no sound, but it's less than $300.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it sort of is your personal little like kind of floating. It's very science fiction.
Yeah, Evan Spiegel described it as having Tinkerbell as your photographer.
Yeah. So it's either you know, a utopian interest or very Black Mirror, depending on how you want to look at it. Right.
So they announced that they are reaching 600 million people a month, 3/4 of them 13 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a company, in my opinion, that has a lot of growth ahead of it.
And do you think that we're going to see something interesting as a second gen wearable AR product from them?
Well, they have one, and I actually tried it. It is, I thought it would be pass through because that's their bread and butter, but it is actually see-through.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's got, you know, it recognizes snap codes right now.
That's the first one that they released, right?
That's the current one.
Yeah, I was just curious.
That's the developer version that's out there.
I was just curious if you think that that they believe there's a future for this. And
I don't think they think it's a consumer product.
No, I don't think anybody does.
It's, you know, it's very much a developer version. The videos I've seen of the content is amazing, but the demo is kind of mad. It was like magically kind of demo. So much better form factor, obviously, but still they're not expecting to do anything much this decade except develop technology and develop content.
Yeah, which again is this long trajectory, right?
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all if they ended up joining forces with Niantic. We'll see. That would be a very big, hard to swallow thing. So Tribeca Film Festival announces its immersive lineup. They're going to have 21 experiences this year. They'll have a live version curated in New York, which I will not see for the first time in 7 years, but they are having a number of them. And last year it was a majority of them in the Museum of Other Realities, where you pay a one ticket price and you have a timed admission. So you have to kind of choose what you want to see, or you have to keep buying. The Tribeca Film Festival is expensive, but this is Museum of Other Realities is the least expensive. They pioneer stuff that you're unlikely to see anywhere else. You know, it's really artistic stuff, really edgy stuff, sometimes stuff for devices like the HoloLens. And, you're often not going to see those things going to places like the Quest, right? They go to museums, they go to universities, they go to art galleries, but they don't, they tend to be PC based. There was the Changing Same, which won the Tribeca Film Festival last year, is actually available in the Quest store for free. And it is a very, very powerful and artistic statement about racism. So
absolutely.
I encourage people to see that. Moving on, there were two notable acquisitions this week. There's a company called WOMP. They haven't launched yet, but it's a female-founded company. They secured almost $5 million for cloud-based 3D software. That sounds to me like Gravity Sketch, right? Which we talked about, as well as the Autodesk acquisition of The Wild.
Yes. So it's an emerging space with lots of competition. So
yeah, and that is still a lot of money. And then Axon Enterprises, famous for making the Taser, has purchased a VR company called Foundry 45 to bolster its training business, I presume, around the Taser.
Yeah,
since I guess it is still new technology and people are learning how to use it. So I mean, VR makes sense, right? You just send a headset loaded with the experience, it's only $300. So, you can widely distribute training material. And I think that that's happening more and more often to remote teams.
Right. Interesting that, the company chose to buy a VR development team as opposed to just outsource
Right.
and call Tailspin, or one of the companies that we know that does VR training. They went a whole nother level and said, well, this is going to be an important part of our future. So maybe we should just buy this company and build it into our whole, working system of how you train to use these devices, these obviously potentially dangerous devices, right?
Yeah, so I think that's interesting, even with the pending recession, people are still investing in XR. We've had some big announcements earlier in the spring from Epic and others. So obviously continues to be viewed as a high growth category for venture capital. Speaking of venture capital, Nreal, which has raised several $100 million, is bringing its Nreal Light smart AR glasses to the UK.
Right. So they continue to chop away at this monster, right? And continue to have probably more scale and more deliverables than really any other true, Viewthrough mixed reality device. You and I've been tracking them and spending a lot of time with them since the very beginnings of their journey, and they keep raising significant capital. Not also kind of interesting in the order of the big tech giants self-funding their properties. We look at hundreds of millions of dollars, going into Nreal every year or so, and that's still fairly modest considering what they're actually accomplishing with it. So it's one to definitely keep an eye on.
So it looks like we have at least part of Steve's team in the waiting room, so we will admit them. Our guest today is Steve Sinclair. He's the SVP of Product and Marketing at Mojo Vision, which, as we said at the top of the show, is making those AR contact lenses. Good morning, Steve, and thanks for coming on the show with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about Mojo Vision. Obviously, Ted and I know what it is, but I suspect our listeners.
Mojo's all about trying to create an augmented reality smart contact lens. You've seen it in the movies. You've seen it in sci-fi for years and years. And we've put together a team. We've been at this for 5 or 6 years now. And we're at the point where we've got prototypes that work, that we can actually prove that it is possible to build something like this. So that's what we're doing.
And is it thin enough to actually sit on the eye? Where's the electronics in it?
Yeah, so we embed it all into a contact lens called a scleral lens. The lens is a slightly larger, rigid contact lens. It's a great platform for embedding electronics inside of it. It is thicker than your standard contact lens, but we've been working really hard to miniaturize all the components that need to go into it so that we can create the experience that we want with a really small, tiny micro LED display, with a radio, with eye tracking, motion sensors built into it, battery power, all of that we're able to fit into that lens.
How much battery power does it have?
Well, right now, not a lot. It's on the order of minutes in the prototype that we're building right now. But our goal is to get it to, several hours of continuous use, which, as you all know, when you're using your smartphone or your smartwatch, you don't use it constantly. So you're able to stretch that out throughout the day.
So Steve, let's back up a couple of steps, because I think a lot of people are very curious what your inspiration was to do this, and maybe your story arc for what you did before this that led you to this moment of, this is where I think my path forward should be. I think because it's a very unique thing that you're doing that is not probably even well understood outside of science fiction movies and
right.
things like that, bringing something like this to reality. So maybe give us a couple of steps as to what your journey was like to get to starting this company.
Sure. Well, some of it's not about me. It's about a couple of our founders that created Mojo Vision 6 years ago. One of them is Dr. Michael Deering, who was head of 3D graphics at Sun Microsystems for many, many years, an early pioneer in AR and VR. And he wanted to build the world's most ultimate display. And from his understanding of how, the science worked and vision science in particular, he came to the conclusion that the best place to put the display was as close to the eye as possible. And so that meant a contact lens. And so he started working on this probably a decade before Mojo even started, trying to figure out how he could do this. In parallel, one of our other co-founders and our CEO, Drew Perkins, who's a serial entrepreneur, has been working in deep tech for years and years and years. He got cataracts in his eyes. And when he had cataract surgery, which is very common surgery, it's probably one of the most common surgeries in the world.
Yeah, I need it.
He got his intraocular lenses, the crystalline lens in his eye replaced. And his vision was better, but it wasn't as good as he had hoped. And he basically said, why in the 2000s we don't have Steve Austin, $6 Million Man bionic eyes? And so he did a bunch of research to figure out how to do that. He got hooked up with Michael Deering, and they started Mojo. I've been in mobility and mobile devices for decades now. I worked on the Handspring and Palm Trio smartphone, if you remember that, with one of the earliest smartphones that was on the market that competed with the BlackBerry, pre-iPhone. And I worked as a product manager there for a number of years. I left there and I went to Apple and joined the iPhone team, and was product manager for iPhone for 6 years in the early years, and helped define a lot of the features that you have in your iPhones today, and launch that. So that gave me a good baseline for building something new and pushing something new out onto the market. A lot of people said, why would I need to carry a computer in my pocket? I've got one on my desktop. And so we're getting a lot of the same reaction to this right now. It's like, well, do I really need to have something on my face or on my eye? And I believe it's the natural progression. So, I think for me personally, this is the culmination of a lot of different things. I happen to work on Android at Google's Motorola division for a number of years too. And we're bringing it all together into something that's really contextual. And really our goal is to make the tech invisible. And what's more invisible than a contact lens that looks normal when you're not using it?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you came from the legacy now of actually understanding the change in form factor and being very early on at the change in form factor before it was mass adopted. And when most people just had curiosity about, I have a computer, it's this thick, it's this wide, it sits on my desk, it's got a big CRT monitor, and now I have laptops and other things, but why am I going to carry it in my pocket? And I was very much one of those like early adopters of course you're going to carry it in your pocket when it gets correct enough, because I was a BlackBerry user for many generations before the iPhone and the Android phones came, and had realization of its productivity. So I get that. I do think that most people will think this is a very significant leap to putting something in your eye. And like there's a point being made visually for those that are actually watching this. You're wearing glasses, Charlie, you're wearing glasses, I wear glasses. I have never put a contact lens in my eye, much less an electronic contact lens. So do you guys discuss those kind of, how do we move forward in those gaps of form factor and comfort, and how you're going to get people to an adoption sort of state of this?
Yeah, we absolutely talk about it all the time. You're right. I do wear glasses. I had to get glasses when I got older because I got presbyopia, which everyone gets at some point, in their 40s or 50s. And so I started to wear glasses at that point. I hadn't put contact lenses in my eyes until I joined Mojo either. And so I do that now on a pretty regular basis for testing and such. And I can see myself moving to that form factor. But you have to remember that there's hundreds of millions of people in the world today that already choose contact lenses as their primary eye corrective vision enhancement tool, right? And so there's already a built-in market for this form factor. People choose it because they want to look younger, they want to look like themselves, they do sports or something active, or they want to wear it under other fashion. And so, if everyone's building glasses, who's building something for all the people that want to wear contact lenses? We don't think there's an either or in this equation. There's going to be, in the future, all of our eyewear is going to be smart in some way, and people are just going to fall into one of those two camps, just like they do today.
I totally agree with that. And you're making a really good point that, you know, there's already a built-in market of hundreds of millions, if not billions around the world of people that wear
Right.
contact lenses on a regular basis. So regardless of how long that arc of technology takes to get to the comfort and the size and the usability, there's already a provable market for it, right? So you probably make that argument very successfully.
But you're just taking what people are already doing and making it better.
Right, right.
That's right. And the other thing that we look at when we think about this form factor is that when you have power and data in a platform that you could put on someone's eye or close to the body, like the eye, it opens up all sorts of possibilities for other medical and health and wellness applications that you could eventually build into that platform. You've of course heard of Verily and what they've tried to do with blood glucose monitoring for contact lenses. That didn't work out as well as they had hoped. But there are a lot of efforts being made in trying to create those types of solutions. And so, you know, we see an opportunity to take this beyond just augmented reality. That's kind of the table stakes for creating a smart contact lens platform. But we're also a medical device company. We're also building the DNA of a medical healthcare type company into Mojo, so that eventually we can build other capabilities into a platform like this that can measure things about yourself that we can only dream of right now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, the ultimate biometric monitoring device.
That's right. There's a lot of sensors that you can put on the eye that could be looking inward into the eye and looking at the back of the retina and understand the onset of different diseases and the different conditions that could be coming on, understanding mental states and acuity. Is possible with something like this. Just the eye tracking data alone, you know, can be used to understand people's states. People are using eye tracking for detecting concussions today, for example, or understanding fatigue or the onset of migraines. And so we see a very long roadmap beyond just the AR capability. But in the short term, we're focused on the vision and the vision health piece. So if we can build a great contact lens that corrects your vision all day long, like a normal contact lens, and we can give you information that's useful to you throughout the day and give you superpowers from that standpoint, we think we have a good starting place for a platform like this.
How long have you or your colleagues actually worn the device at this point? Like what's
not particularly long. We've been doing it. We'll do it for 30 minutes to an hour at a time. We have had some of our optometrists and some of our internal testers wear longer than that. One of the key elements of building a great contact lens is making sure that your eye gets enough oxygen because it breathes through the air. And so when you're embedding electronics into a contact lens, you have to make sure the oxygen can still get into the eye. And so we've been increasing the amount of time that we wear it as we refine the way that we build the lens so that we make sure that you stay healthy with your eyes.
Is there a heat issue as well?
There actually isn't. We're testing for that. We're certainly collecting all the data to prove that's the case. But the components are so small, the power requirements for what we've built are so tiny that the lens doesn't appreciably heat up in any way. So it's important that we collect all that info. As I said, we are an FDA regulated device, and we have to take all that body of evidence to the FDA and prove to them that it's safe.
Kind of incredible that Mojo seems to be the only company making this kind of product. That said, as Ted pointed out at the beginning of the conversation, this is kind of like somebody thought 10 years ago, hey, you know what would be great?
Yeah.
And then, you know, they would have to invent all these things to actually make it even remotely possible.
Yeah,
which is how all new significant things start, right? I mean, someone's got to take that risk and someone's got to get out on that edge and start to understand how long it takes. Like as you're talking, I'm thinking the battery challenge has to be an enormous challenge that you have to work through. And, you know, like, are you going to have to rely on next gen nano battery technology that's also emerging probably at the same rate as your project is emerging, right? And many years down the road, you'll start to figure out that you can do this, just like now we carry a device in our pocket that sort of powers all day, but we really haven't completely solved that, right? I mean, there's always stress points about, you know, the amount of power that you need just to drive a device that weighs, I don't know, many ounces that sits in your pocket, right? So it's a really interesting, going to be a very interesting challenge.
Yeah, you're right about that. As far as every element of the system is at a different level of maturity. Both from a technology perspective, as far as how it's progressed in the world, but also in a systems integration element. I mean, we have to pull all these things together. We initially thought, oh, we'll just get a bunch of off-the-shelf components and make sure we get the lightest and smallest versions of those, and let's see what we can build. And then we discovered, of course, oh, those don't exist. So we had to invent a lot of it. Like the micro LED display, we invented that. We had to build it ourselves because it just didn't exist in the world. Things are starting to catch up, and things are going to get better, and we'll be able to make improvements like that. But you're right. All of those pieces are, you have to work each part of each of those problems. As far as competitors, the only one we know of is Wayne Enterprises in the Batman movie. So we're waiting to see who else pops up. But right now it's just Bruce Wayne.
It's good. Love it.
It's incredible that you guys have raised so much money. I mean, the investors have just, made, I mean, I know that's what venture capital is about, but what a huge leap of faith those guys have taken.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate with the team of investors that we have. The syndicate that we put together has been awesome. They're super helpful with the introductions we need, helping us with the technology and the roadmap and giving us feedback on what we're building. NEA in particular, who's one of our lead investors, has been amazing. And that is what they're there for. They are there to find disruptive ideas, and this is one of those ideas.
So how long do you think, Steve? Now, I know you have absolutely no idea, no idea when I say this, but how long do you think, it'll be before these sorts of devices start to be commercially available?
Well, we hope it's sooner rather than later. We hope it's fewer years than we put into it. We'll put it that way, because we have been working hard on this, and we want to see it. We want to see it come into the world. But it becomes a time and money equation. Like we can put more resources into it. I think we can go faster. Certainly there's the FDA and the regulatory side of it, that we have to prove to the right folks that it's safe. We have to prove to optometrists that it's safe, and then we have to prove it to the consumers that it's safe. And so, it is going to be a number of years before it becomes mainstream. But just proving that we can do it is a big piece of it. And then secondly, it's making sure the world's ready for it. And we're rooting for the AR glasses world to succeed, because we think that will help us. So that's important. We want to see Apple or Meta or whomever it's going to be bring something out that's useful and that people want to wear. So that's good for us if that happens. So we'll keep pushing that.
Yeah, these are step function, important parts of the step function logic, right? That if
Right.
there's an ecosystem of value chain, you will get to the right device. And we've seen this before with other forms of compute, which is what you're talking about, is a new form of compute and visual information use case. Is there an audio component to this linked with earbuds or something that things will, like with glasses, obviously you build the sound into the temples, right? But with something you're wearing in your eye, you have to wear a secondary device for audio. Is there some advancements or partner companies that you're already talking with on the sound side of this equation for the full AV experience?
Yeah, nothing I can announce right now, but certainly audio needs to be an element of it. But we really don't want to reinvent that. And so you're right, it's going to be more of a partnership conversation than it's going to be Mojo inventing new ways to do audio. We look at that as somewhat of a solved problem in respect to what we're doing. And so you have that aspect of it. Of course, we want to have some level of voice assistance built into it. So, we're fortunate to have investments from Google's Gradient Ventures. So, we have an opportunity to work with the Google team. We have an investment from the Amazon Alexa Fund. So we have an opportunity to work with them as well. We don't have to invent the assistant.
Right, all those other companion technologies you require.
That's right. So, but the primary way you interact with this device is with your eyes, and Charlie had a chance to try that out.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. It's your eyes or the operating system, your gaze.
Right.
That's
so
right.
Hopefully I'll get an invite soon. I'm waiting with bated breath.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. It's important for people to see it and, not just talk about it. And so we're trying to be forthcoming with folks so they can see our journey along the way, and hopefully, keep us honest on how good the tech is and where we're bringing it and where we're taking it, and the types of use cases that we're proposing for it.
Well, as you probably know, both Charlie and I are very comfortable with early stage tech, and have lived through many lives. I mean, I've built products with early stage tech. Charlie's reported on products forever with early stage tech. So we like this stuff. It's interesting to us. We're very comfortable giving things a try. Although I do like the fact that Charlie said you don't actually have to put it in your eye yet to test it, because I do have some trepidation about that. But if you've done it and you've never worn contacts before that, then my trepidation is already lowered. So that's good.
Yeah, it works, and you learn how to do it. And there's going to be millions of people that choose to do it already. So that's not
not an issue. Right.
So that's all the time we have, Steve, but I want to thank you again for dropping in and talking about Mojo. It's great to ECU.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Always happy to talk about this stuff, and looking forward to showing you the next version of it when it's ready.
I can't wait. That's our show, everybody. Have a great weekend.